Well, today we're continuing our series entitled Fixer Upper. I read the article this week, I think it was, that somebody's come out and has filed a lawsuit against Chip because he bought them out before the show went with HGTV, and they felt like they needed their piece of the pie, and the response was, well, sure the truth will come out. So Chip said in a manner of speaking, and they hold no grudges, and so we wish them well with that as brothers and sisters in the Lord. And but we've enjoyed this series. I've actually enjoyed this series greatly because of the subtitle, Renovating Relationships. And so some of you will remember 2 weeks ago we talked about renovating our marital or our couple relationships with those significant people in our lives. We talked about that and how that was much needed. And then we talked about last week about renovating our family relationships, and we talked explicitly really about how God feels about children and how important they were to Him and how we should respond to that. And we talked not just about the biological family, but we talked about the blended family, we talked about foster parenting, we talked about adoption. We had a big area last week that we brought that all into and summed it up with just a few thoughts really that applies to all. And so I hope you were here for that. If you didn't, it is on our church YouTube page. You can find it on the Facebook page, a link to that. But the YouTube page, never mentioned this, but it's YouTube.com/Warm Spring. Based on Emmaus, the word means warm spring. So that's where you can find it. I'm in the wrong sermon here. And so today, we're going to talk about a vital area, I think, and it goes to this whole subject of relationships, because in the New Testament, when the Apostle Paul deals with the home, marriage, he deals with children, he always deals with another relationship. It's in Ephesians, it's in Colossians. We also see some semblances of it in Peter. He deals with the relationship between those that have authority over us, that we are responsible to. Now, in that day and time, it was the relationship between slaves and their masters. Now, the Bible doesn't speak against slavery. It doesn't speak for it, actually, or against it. But it does recognize that it was a part of the culture of their day. And you know what? I think that a lot of times Christians need to realize this is a part of the culture, and this is how Christianity and faith applies to that. And so Paul references this relationship between those who have authority over us and how we respond to them, and what their responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are. And so this is a very needed subject that I think sometimes we want to shy away from today, and because we struggle with it. We struggle with how we view our bosses. We struggle with how we view our employers. We may struggle as an employer or as a supervisor with those people that we are accountable for, as well as the job. And so it's a great struggle, and a lot of people check their Christianity at the church door, and they don't take it into the business marketplace. And so Paul, in this whole subject matter, he wants us to understand that when Christ comes in, He renovates our whole life, and it should affect everywhere we go, including the marketplace of the world. Now, you may be here, you may be a student. Well, I want you to know somebody has authority over you, not only a parent, but when you go to the school, there are principals and there are teachers, and they have authority over you. And so how you respond to them is a witness to Christ. The same goes for how they treat you. And so, by the way of kind of getting into this story, this passage today, I want to tell you a personal story about myself. Many, many years ago, Tammy and I, we've been married a few years. We already had kids, so it was probably we were in the early teen years of our marriage, I guess. Hannah was probably about 6, 7, 8, maybe. Emily was a little bit younger. And we were living in a house in Murray County that we had purchased. And we wanted to do some renovation. You know, we wanted to spruce things up. And now, I am not a home fixer-upper kind of guy. How many of you know that about me? That's just not my gift. But Tammy, she's one of those people that can do anything. She just does all things well. And I'm not just bragging on her, she really, really does. She laid hardwood flooring in the first house that we so she's done it all. But in this particular situation, I had a job to do one day. I was supposed to paint the hallway. You remember that, don't you? Her face just went, oh. I was supposed to paint the hallway. And she came home and found what she would describe as the biggest mess she'd ever seen of painting. I am not a good painter. In fact, since then, I don't think I picked up a paintbrush except to clean it up. Or move it from someplace to someplace else. But I painted the hallway. Nice, pretty, taupey tan color that we were doing the house in. And I can remember so clearly that there was a doorbell or some sort of fixture on the wall, sort of like that light fixture, but there was a fixture. And I didn't know to take it down or to take the cover off. I just sort of swiped around it, you know. Of course, there were ugly brush marks all around it. And to Tammy, that perfectionist eye that she's got, she came in and, oh boy, she just told me how horrible it was. And so what happened was we had a big argument. And she was right. She was right. I was wrong, as usual. It was anything uncommon. But I told you that story to make a point that when we do something, some of you learn this growing up. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing. I didn't learn that growing up. Okay? I was not in the home where I learned how to do stuff like that. I was the baby. I had 2 older brothers. They did everything. And I was never included in those things. So I didn't learn those handy skills. But, and so I didn't do a very good job. And to this day, I have not picked up a paintbrush since to use it. I don't think. I think that was the last time I swore off. I have not painted again. And I haven't. I don't think. But it is worth doing right. And a lot of us know that's true in our personal things for ourselves. But we don't carry that to work when it's for somebody else. And so this is what Paul is talking about. Colossians chapter 3, verse 22 is where we're going to take our text today. And he says, Some translations use the word slaves. I think this is the ESV translation. Uses the word bondservant. It means the same thing. It's those who are responsible to others. Bondservants obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Verse 23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. Everybody say, not for men.
Not for men.
It's not for me. If you're a believer, if you're a Christian today, you're working for the Lord no matter who signs the paper. Whatever you do, work heartily for the Lord and not for men. Verse 24. Knowing that the Lord will receive the knowing that from the Lord, you will receive the inheritance as your reward. And then I separated in there for the sake of viewing it, the last phrase of that verse, because I want you to see it. You are serving the Lord Christ. And so if we're really going to have a renovation of our relationships, then it shouldn't stop with our marital relationship, and it shouldn't stop with our relationship with kids. Then we need to deal with this ugly room in our house, so to speak, of how we relate to those we serve, or how we relate to those who serve us. And so Paul always includes this when he's talking about this culture of relationships. And so the word slave there means, or bondservant means, those who are responsible for work, those who are under authority. Now, a lot of times in their culture, these slaves were trusted servants who perhaps had been born into that slavery in that home as a part of that family. They were very akin to the family. They were not just anybody, but they were people that they trusted. A lot of these bondservants, they would work in places of responsibility inside the home or even outside the home, caring for some, having oversight over some area. They were not just common laborers. And can I tell you something today? No matter what you do, you may work in a factory, you may work in a mill, you may drive a truck, you may talk on the telephone, but you are not just a common laborer, because you are not just serving men, you are serving the Lord. See, the word is doulos in the original language, and it talks about being a servant. It's the same word that's used for the word minister, for what they call me. Same word. And so we're serving the Lord. And so bondservants were a lot like family. And then he says, obey. The word obey means listen to. Listen to this. Do this in the things you like. Is that what the verse says? Does it just say in the things you like to do? In the pleasant task. Oh, you need somebody to go buy pizza today for lunch? Oh, I'll do that. You need somebody to scrub the toilet? Oh, let's get so-and-so to do that. It's in everything. You see, it's not about the job. It's about who you serve. Obey in everything, the pleasant and the unpleasant, those who you serve, who are your earthly masters. Not because they're watching and to please them or to get them to think you're something. And we've all known that you work with somebody who was one way when the boss was around. And they looked like they were $1 million. But when the boss wasn't around, you knew they wasn't worth a plug nickel. Oh, what a plug nickel is, but I've heard that expression my whole life. That wasn't worth much. You see, sometimes we like to pick and choose what we want to do. The ultimate example of this is in the Old Testament. You remember Joseph. Joseph was a favored son. He was of the family of Israel. He was the son that Jacob had longed for. Remember, he's the one that got the coat of many colors. And his brothers, they were jealous over him. They sold him into slavery. He became a slave in Egypt. And he worked in Potiphar's house. But because he chose to do things as unto the Lord and not what he thought, he sought to please those he served. He advanced all the way to second in the whole world at that time, really, the known world. He was in charge of everything. In fact, he said this. He said, God has sent me here to provide so that you would have a living during the time of famine. He kept the nation of Israel alive because he was willing to serve as a slave, although it was forced, but he excelled in that. And so that's what Paul's talking about. Whatever we've got before us, we should excel in that. And so let me give you quickly, I've taken a long time on the introduction, let me give you just 4 quick statements, 4 quick words, really, that we can apply to how we work in the marketplace of this world. The first word is the word sincerely. How do we serve men as to the Lord? We do it sincerely. The word sincerely in our passage means genuinely. It means without wax. Now, in that day and time, there were people who made earthen pots and vessels, and they would sell them in the marketplace. And if there was a crack in it, they would fill it with wax, color over it, so that it would hold water or it would do its purpose, but it was blemished. It was a second. It had a problem. And they would sell it for first quality, basically, getting the higher price out of it. And they would be there in the marketplace, and so if you were a wise buyer, you would take that pot or that vessel that you're looking at, and you would hold it up to the light. And in the light, you could see the crack that had been filled. You know what? A lot of people in the marketplace, we're acting as if we're first quality when we're not really genuine. We filled in because we're seeking to please men instead of the Lord. Now, I say we, it's not y'all, is it? It's all those other people. It's all those other people. It also means not only without wax, it means without folds. It's a picture of fabric. A piece of fabric that they would have it laid on the table, and it would be folded in such a way that you couldn't see a bad spot in the fabric. And they'd sell it. And then later they'd come back and say, this has, oh no, this is first quality. You bought this and it's yours. No refund, no refund. It means to be free from pretense. You get the picture. It's to be what God knows you are in front of your employer, those who have authority over you. Now, we're all guilty of this to some extent. I know I worked in the marketplace before I was full-time in ministry. I did it for many, many years. And can I tell you, I've even been guilty of it as a minister. A little bit of show to make it look like things are really good when it's not. See, we know about this. But Paul wants us to know that God is watching. And God sees, and that we are not to work for the approval of man, but for the approval of God. Sincerely. Secondly, I got to hurry. Reverently. And that means fearing God. That's what it says. Fearing the Lord in that verse. The word fearing there means to be seized with alarm. Be aware that the alarm's going to go off and there's going to be a judgment. See, the Apostle Paul talked all about this in 1 Corinthians 3, where he talked about that God will judge every man's what? Who remembers the word that's used there? His work. God will judge our work to see what sort it is, the Bible says. And so it's not a judgment of our salvation. It's not to say whether we're lost or saved. But as believers in Christ, it is a judgment of how we handle the fact that we are a Christian in relation to others. And so we are to be reverent, realizing that God is watching and God is the true judge, whether the boss sees it or not, or whether employees know that you're mistreating them or not. You say, how could they not know? Well, they could not know if you're sharp. God knows. So then there's a third word. How do we serve men as to the Lord? We do it willingly. We're not hard to get along with our bosses. We're not that grumbling person who complains every time the employer asks us to do something that's unpleasant. In fact, we look for those opportunities to serve heartily or with all our heart. It means to put all our effort into it. It's actually a word that means in comparison to. To put all our effort into it in comparison to half-heartedness. It's wholeheartedness is what it's talking about. It also talks about enthusiastic excellence. Now, the Greek language of that day, the word where we get our word enthusiasm, it's just like our English word, the en, is the same as our English word in, to be in. Thus was a Greek word that related to God. And then the remaining portion of that word has to do with how we live that out. To be enthusiastic is to be in God and how we characterize that. To do it willingly. Somebody said, if I was a ditch digger, I'd want to be the best ditch digger in the ditch. And that's what we as Christians should be. But a lot of times it's becoming a forgotten thing in this world where we think that we can live one way on Sunday, but when it comes to Monday, we are different. And our chief witness should be the influence of our life Monday through Saturday, not Sunday. So then there's a fourth word, sincerely, reverently, willingly, and it's confidently. Because the Bible says, knowing that God will give the inheritance as your reward. So you have a confidence that what you're doing has a purpose. You may be cleaning up slop. Isn't that a great thought? Knowing that God will give the inheritance as a reward. In other words, your paycheck may not show it this week. but God will give an inheritance as a reward. By the way, the word reward means a possession. Now, it may not be a material possession, but you will possess His favor. You will possess the satisfaction of doing a job well. And then in the original, when the scriptures were written, there were no chapters and verses. Chapter 4, verse 1 goes right into this. And he tells us, chapter 4, verse 1, he says, Masters, treat your bondservants, those who work for you, justly and fairly. And what are they supposed to be doing? Knowing that you also have a master in heaven. So in other words, as Christians, we should know that God is involved. Whether we're an employer, whether we're a supervisor, whether we're the low man on the totem pole, so to speak, God knows. Here's the emphasis of this whole passage. He talks about slaves and masters. We pass over that because we say, oh, we're not slaves and masters anymore. But don't miss it. The emphasis is the responsibility of a godly relationship. We have a responsibility. When we practice godliness towards those we are responsible to serve or employ, God will practice generosity towards us. Say, wait a minute, how'd you get that generosity? Well, I'm glad. I want you to look with me at a passage of Scripture that a lot of us misunderstand. Luke chapter 6. I'm wrapping this up. Luke chapter 6. How many of you have heard, give and it will be given to you? You've heard that. You've heard that a lot. Can I tell you? When you read this verse and you read it in its greater context, money is not mentioned. I challenge you to go home and read it. Money is not mentioned. You know what he's talking about in the greater context? This is Jesus talking, the Sermon on the Mount, which is the way of the kingdom, the way that the kingdom servants should live. That's what the Sermon on the Mount is all about. He's talking about how we relate to others. And it's in the midst of a paragraphs that talks about having a critical spirit and criticizing and judging others. And in the end, when we refuse and we grumble and we complain about doing it for God in our marketplace world, we judge and criticize those who have authority over us. And Paul is trying to teach us that if we really want to have a renovated life in Christ, then we need to understand it affects all of life. It affects where we work. It affects how we work. And it affects who we work for. You may work for such and such person and such meal and have such and such supervisor, but you work for Christ. That's the whole point. And you have a responsibility to have a godly relationship with those that God has placed in authority over you. Now, until such time that you say, you know what, this is not the job for me anymore, and I'm going to turn in my notice and leave you, until that time, you have a responsibility to be there heartily, to be there willingly, to be there excelling in excellence and doing your very best as if you are trying to make them money and trying to advance their cause for God's glory. That's really what it means. Look at the rest of this passage. Give, and it will be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. Now, it could include money. It could have to do with the way that you give, but really it's talking about so much more than that. For with the measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. In the same way that you serve others, God's going to reward you. Now, I know you probably, when I started the sermon, you're probably thinking, oh, this is I really don't want to talk about. But I think you'd have to agree with me that this could be one of the most beneficial teachings in our life, because God will bless us by how we bless those we serve and those that we employ. We have a responsibility, if we are a supervisor or a godly or an employer, we have a responsibility to have a godly relationship with those we serve. In fact, do you remember the story of Philemon? I'm going a little long here. Philemon chapter 1. It was only one chapter. But Philemon, he was a runaway slave. He got saved. He ministered to Paul. Paul sent him back to Philemon, and he said, forgive him. If he owes you anything, put it on my account. And Philemon was charged. He was the master. He was charged to have a godly relationship with a slave that had now become a Christian. That's what the whole book of Philemon's about. So godly relationships aren't just something that happens at church. You say, well, what if they're not a Christian? You can still have a godly relationship with them. They may not reciprocate, but I guarantee you, your influence will grow. And so here's the takeaway today. Here's the sticky statement I want you to take with you and go home with. Give, and it will be given to you. Give, and it will be given to you. Give, and it will be given to you. Now, what would happen if you began to do this? What would happen if you began to listen to and serve the people who have authority in your life? It's kind of hard. I might have to apologize. That might be the very thing that will cause that person to become a Christian. That might be the very thing, your old stinking, sour attitude that you've had. Not y'all, those other people. Anybody ever smelled a sour dishcloth? It's been used and wet and not run out. It's just sort of been wadded up in the corner. And after a while, that old flame will start stinking. That's the way it is when we've got a critical and hateful attitude towards those we are called to serve. That's what it is. You think they don't know it? You stink. Your attitude stinks and they know it. No wonder you don't get the promotion or the advancement. No wonder you aren't treated with more respect. Not y'all, them. I'm sorry. Them. You know, let them. We know who it is, don't we? What would happen if we began to listen to and serve the people who have authority over our life? They would begin to notice a difference about us. We would begin to do better work. We began to have a better attitude. And guess what? We would have a happier day. Everybody else would be happier. You say, oh, some people, but you can't make them happy. I disagree. They may be miserable, but sooner or later, love wins out. You'd do better work. You'd have a better attitude. People would be drawn to you, and the influence of your life would increase. When there's an important job to be done, they'll ask you to do it. You say, well, that's extra work. Why would I want to do that? Work heartily as unto the Lord. Because you're doing it for Him. An important job that has to be done right. They're going to call you. You might not even have to do it. You might just have to see that someone else does it. You're setting yourself up for future advancement in order to become a supervisor rather than those who have to do everything. You're not just a common laborer. Not that there's anything wrong with being a common laborer. You can be a common laborer all your life and still have a powerful witness. Ultimately, you'll be respected and you'll have more self-respect and have the satisfaction of knowing you've done a job and you've done it right. This is what happens when you give. It will be given to you.